Okay, next up is the Florida Gators. We've just talked about the Florida State Seminoles, and now we're moving down south just a little bit down to Gainesville, Florida. We got a new regime in Gainesville. Billy Napier taking over for Dan Mullen, and no better person to talk Florida Gators than Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Kevin's been covering the Gators for many, many years. Had a little hiatus, went up and covered my Indiana Hoosiers up in the Midwest. And now he's back covering the Florida Gators for the Gainesville Sun again. So welcome to the podcast, Kevin Brockway.
Yes, it's great to be back, and I'm sure it'll feel better in the winter when my friends up in Indiana are freezing, and I'm down here
right
enjoying a pina colada and a nice 70-degree day.
That's right. You go from one great college town to another. So Bloomington and Gainesville, two great college towns. So before we so the Florida ends 2021 at 6-7, 2-6 in the SEC. Obviously, they fired Dan Mullen and bring in Billy Napier from Louisiana. For those of you that don't know, Billy Napier had a nice run at Louisiana, 40-12 at Louisiana. Is a Nick Saban disciple, coached under Saban a little bit back before he got the Louisiana job. Comes to Gainesville. First, let's talk Billy Napier before we get into the roster and all that stuff. What is the fan base's kind of reaction to Napier? A young guy, pretty young guy. He's in his early 40s. Mullen's kind of tenure kind of ended a little conspicuously there at the end. What is the sentiment from Gainesville about Billy Napier?
Well, I think what they first like about Billy Napier is he's bringing discipline and accountability to the program, and that was sorely lacking under Dan Mullen. You saw it on the field, obviously, beginning with Marco Wilson, which the shoe throwing incident, which really was kind of the beginning of the end, I think, of the Dan Mullen era. From that point going forward, with Billy Napier, I think you're going to see a guy that's not going to put up with any nonsense, that wants his players to live the right way off the field and to be more disciplined on the field. He does a penalty chart after every practice where they go over things and they kind of methodically, I wouldn't necessarily say dress down, but really address penalties. That's been a big emphasis on camp. If you look at Florida historically in the last 10 years, they've been first or second in the SEC in penalty yardage in about 7 of them. So that's been a huge point of emphasis, discipline, taking care of the football. And I think that plays well to this fan base, because this fan base does not just want their team to do well. They want to do well, and they want to do it the right way.
Any concerns by the fans about Napier making the big jump from Louisiana to Florida? Usually guys go from a Louisiana to maybe a mid-level conference job, and then they get a Florida type of job. Any concern there?
Well, really, other than Dan Mullen, that's been their MO, is to go younger, up and coming, smaller school. Even Urban came from Utah, but people forget at that time Utah wasn't even in the Pac-12 yet. I mean, they were kind of a Mountain West team,
right?
You looked at a guy like Will Muschamp, who didn't even have any head coaching experience. Then Jim McElwain from Colorado State, and then Dan Mullen came from Mississippi State. Came from another SEC school. So I think with this, they know that if you have the right guy, you have the right guy. And I think Napier's youth and his energy will play very well, certainly. And it's already shown, I think, on the recruiting trail.
So I saw a note about his coaching staff. I think I see a note that he has 60 guys, 60 people a part of his football operations staff?
That's the trend right now, though. I mean, you look at Alabama and Nick Saban, and you look at all these other Georgia, like Will Muschamp was working behind the scenes in Georgia, right, as an analyst this year. He's on the field. But it's all about, all these guys trying to figure out 3rd and 7, right? It's amazing that you have so many people, but it's a very specialized operation. But I think in this competitive world in the SEC and throughout all Power 5 college football, FBS college football, you need every advantage you can get. And I think that the schools are investing in it. And I don't think they would be doing it if it wasn't working. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Saban and Kirby Smart kind of mastered this whole, CEO of a Fortune 500 corporation. And you hate to say it, college football programs at the level of Florida are kind of like that. I mean, that's what is the NIL trend been leading in Gainesville? Has there been a lot of guys in Gainesville benefiting from that? How's all that trickled out?
Yeah, well, they have the Gator Collective, which I'm still learning a little bit more about on the beat, having just restarted. But it seems like it's a pretty powerful entity, and I think they are using it to their advantage in recruiting. How much? I don't know. Because down the state in Miami, they seem to be very aggressive with NIL. I wouldn't say Florida's tremendously aggressive, but I wouldn't say that they're behind the times either. I would say they're probably somewhere in between, and they're using it as a tool. I think the other huge recruiting tool is that Florida opened up. We saw it yesterday, the $85 million Heavener Center, which is the kind of akin to Alabama and Clemson in terms of the standalone facility trend. And Florida's is really beautiful. I mean, they really did a nice job with it, and it's very functional from a football standpoint as well. It's connected to the indoor practice facility, and that's another tool in recruiting along with NIL. I think that the Gators can use to try to attract the top talent in the state and also nationally.
Very good. All right. Let's get on the field. Let's start with the offense. From all indications, everything's going to not revolve, but the centerpiece is going to be Anthony Richardson. We all want to know what Anthony Richardson is. He played, a lot of hype about him last year. He only started one game of all things. He started the Georgia game, which, he kind of got thrown into the fire there. For whatever reason, Mullen didn't want to play him as a starter a whole lot. Your initial thoughts on Richardson and kind of where he's at in his development.
Yeah, I think with Anthony Richardson, I think they're trying to temper expectations. I think Billy Napier had a line. Here's a guy that's completed 33 career passes, and he said the great ones at Florida quarterbacks can complete 33 passes in one game. So that kind of tells you,
right.
In terms of just his inexperience. But at the same time, you can't discount the arm talent. You can't discount the talent of his legs also and his ability to run. And that's going to be a big debate. But durability was an issue with Anthony Richardson also last year. And I think that's going to be the big debate. How much do you run him? How much do you let him be a dual threat quarterback? Jack Miller, the backup, went down with a broken thumb. So he's going to be gone at least the first 2 weeks of the season. So you have really inexperience in the backup. Jalen Kitna and Kyle Engel, who's a walk-on, are the other two. And Max Brown, a true freshman. So there's not a lot behind Anthony Richardson. He's going to have to, carry the load. And particularly, if you take a look at the first two games, Utah and Kentucky, those are games where you're probably going to play your starter the whole game anyway. So he's going to have to be ready. I think there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of potential there. There needs to be some maturing off the field too. And,
right.
In terms of being a leader, and Billy Napier's addressed that also. Certainly that speeding ticket that he got in the spring. Billy Napier wants Anthony Richardson to be an example as well, someone that a leader of men, somebody that people can follow. So that's another important aspect too in his growth, not just on the field but off the field too.
It's a little trickier for him because if I recall, he's a Gainesville kid. He's a local kid.
Yeah.
So that with all that pressure and all the people around and family and all that stuff puts a little more pressure, even more so on his development. The one thing I've noticed, and you and I both know this, when Florida's been great over the years, they've had dynamic skill at the wide receiver position, quarterback and wide receiver. Do you see that on this roster at all? I know they lost Jacob Copeland, left. They brought in another kid, Pearsall. Just talk about the wide receiving core and the elite skill, because again, when Florida State, Miami have been great, they've had the elite skill on the outside of, especially offensively and at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, I still think that's to be determined. And, we've watched them practice and we see some flashes of some guys. One day, maybe Xavier Henderson will have a good practice. One day, Justin Shorter will show us some things. But for the most part, it's, I think kind of hit or miss. Ricky Pearsall looked really good early in practice and they got hurt. I think he's probably the fastest and quickest, and his ability to get open, I think, is probably the best of the group. But I think the issue with him is, he got a foot injury the first week of the season, and when he comes back, and they're hoping he'll be back in practice this week, but when he comes back, will he be at 100%, and will he be that dynamic guy that can shake loose and shake free? So still a lot of question marks there, I think, and that's going to be to be determined. I mean, Justin Shorter is a guy that certainly has a lot of talent. He's a 5-star recruit out of high school. He's a big kid, but he's not necessarily the burner downfield. But he'll be very effective, I think, in the red zone, on a lot of those jump balls because of his size and his strength.
So I know one of the things Napier really took advantage of is the transfer portal. Brought in a couple guys from Louisiana with him. The running back Montrell Johnson he brought a lineman or two. So talk about the running back room. Montrell, is this guy legit? I mean, he had a great freshman year at Louisiana. Is he in line to be the number one, or is that going to be a kind of a committee deal?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a committee deal. I'm actually writing about that this week, and I think that but Montreal is certainly a guy I think that will be in the mix for sure. They've been very impressed with him. He's done pretty well in practice. Another guy, Naquan Wright, a returner who's kind of emerging a little bit late last season. He's got a little more experience, so you might go with him to start with Montreal. Lorenzo Lingard, another guy, a big X factor, a guy I knew from Miami, 5-star. That just never really kind of panned out down there and comes up here. He's going to get another opportunity, and he's got a lot of talent and ability that's untapped, and they're hoping to get out of him. And then Travis Etienne, the freshman, is a really nice young player whose brother obviously started Clemson. So I think that he's a true freshman that could get some chances too, and it's opened some eyes.
I would say one of the great things this year, no matter all throughout the roster, guys are going to get opportunities. There's nobody that's set, and there's not many guys that are probably set in stone that is the clear guy. Where on both sides of the ball, guys are going to get opportunities. Freshmen, transfers, all these different guys. If things aren't going great, they're going to get opportunities. Is that what you see?
That's what I see. I think it's wide open because of the fact that it's a new staff, and I don't think that they have any preconceived notion on these players. A lot of the returning players they didn't recruit, so there's not going to be that kind of lobbying for that. I think everyone's going to get an opportunity.
Offensive line struggles, that seemed to have been an issue here for a couple of years with Mullen. I know Napier's got his offensive line is the OC as well, so maybe that will be more of a focus. What are your thoughts on the offensive line?
Yeah, that's an area where Napier really wants to develop strength and size. And he feels like he's got a good rotation of 8 guys. He's looking for 9 to 10. Obviously, the huge addition being Osiris Torrance coming from Louisiana, the transfer, that without taking a snap in the SEC is already considered a first-team preseason All-SEC player. I think that's interesting.
Wow.
But that tells you the respect that he has around the country and what he did at Louisiana, which he was one of the best offensive linemen in the country there, 6'5", 347. He's got the size. So I think that, the 2 tackles, Tarquin and Garage, are guys that have a little experience. Tarquin is a guy that they really want coming. And then Ethan White at one of the guard spots is another guy worth watching. So they'll be okay. But I think that they want to develop that physical mindset. What Napier wants to do is he wants to establish a run and play off that and play action. That's kind of his MO. That's his offense. And they're going to run the football, and they're going to try to develop a really physical offensive line to do that.
And as you and I both know, to be elite, not just in the SEC, but nationally, you got to be good in the trenches. You got to have offensive linemen. You got to have defensive linemen. You have to have depth, because playing in that league, you're going to lose guys to injuries for periods of time. So you got to have, like you said, 9 to 10 guys where you're at least 2 deep everywhere along the line. So, all right, before we get to the defense, let's talk kicking game a little bit. I'm a former, as you know, I'm a former kicker punter back in the day, long time ago. So I'm always big on special teams, especially for teams that are maybe not going to be elite. Where special teams, hidden yardage, don't miss the kicks you're not supposed to miss, things like that. Florida's field goal kicking struggled last year. They weren't great. They were okay, not great. What is there pretty strong emphasis on special teams with Napier?
Yeah, and boy, you look at what McPherson did with the Bengals. They really missed him. They really missed him last year. He was really something. It just shows you the value of having that kicker that can, make those kicks from beyond 40 yards as well. Everyone should be automatic inside 40. I agree, but when you get beyond 40. So you've got Trey Smack and you've got Adam Mahalik as 2 guys. Mahalik is a walk-on. Trey Smack is a scholarship guy. Those have been the 2 that have been battling out at the kicking position throughout camp. And Trey Smack is Trey Smack is a guy I think that's got a pretty decent leg from what we've seen in some workouts. But Mahalik hit a couple in the spring game from beyond 40 yards. So it's a good battle. And, Billy Napier is still to be determined. I asked him about it, I think on Sunday, and He said it could come down to the first week of the season. And he said he could see one guy doing both kickoffs and field goals, or he could, maybe split them up a little bit. Maybe one guy has a stronger leg for kickoffs, and another guy is better in the field goals. Yeah, punter, they're pretty set with Jeremy Crenshaw.
Right.
He's a guy that
had a good year.
They like and had a good year. And another one of those Australian punters is pretty amazing. Coming from the Big Ten, Indiana had Hayden Whitehead, Adam Korsak, and that's the trend, right? Go to Australia, get yourself a punter. They have a great development program down there in terms of their background with Australian rules football. So these kids have been punting the ball since they were 4 or 5 years old on the run, and now you're seeing a lot of these guys flourish in college football.
Yeah, we got a Australian punter down here at USF down here in Tampa as well. A big, tall kid who I've had the fortune to see him work out a few times as far as at their practices, and he crushes the ball when he hits the ball well. So, all right, so you're listening to the Florida Football Insiders podcast with Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. We're breaking down the Florida Gators, 2022, 6-7. Billy Napier taking over. Let's talk defense. Brenton Cox is probably the best defensive lineman on the roster. What else do you see is from all indications that he seems like he's clearly the best guy they've got? Talk about the defensive line a little bit.
Yeah, and Gervon Dexter too. I wouldn't sleep on him. I think he's a very talented guy up front as well. So you've got some, skill there, and Princely Unamorin. They're trying to establish a little more depth on that area.
All right, linebackers. This seems to be the kind of the most overall quality part of the defense. Their leading linebacker left and went to Utah. Is that a big blow, or is that just kind of a part of the change of regime?
Part of the portal, but Ventrell Miller is back, and the key I think is keeping him healthy. He's a really consistent tackler in the front seven. He's a guy that I think is going to be very important for them. Amari Burney is another guy that a guy that's opened some eyes a little bit is Derek Wingo. He might get some opportunities. Scooby Johnson, another guy who I think is a really good cover linebacker. So, it's interesting when you talk about scheme. Patrick Toney, their very young defensive coordinator, they're going to do this kind of creeper defense where they're going to bring different pressures from linebackers, from defensive backs, disguise a lot of pressures. And that's how they're going to really go about it. And it's going to be interesting to see if there's improvement over, certainly the Todd Grantham era, where the last couple of years they really struggled.
In the back end and the back four, again, another area where when Florida's been really good, they've had really good corners, really good safeties. What do you see out of the back end here in 2020?
Yeah, Rashad Torrance and Trey Dean, you've got some experience coming back at the safety spots. I think the big question is at the corners. Certainly you've got some talent. You've got some battles there. Jalen Kimber, the transfer from Georgia, is certainly a guy that has certainly flashed a little bit. And Devin Moore too is another guy who's been pretty impressive, the freshman from Naples, Florida. So you've got some guys there that I think have done a pretty good job. And certainly I think that Jason Marshall Jr. has been hurt. So that certainly has hurt them as well.
So they're going to, in your opinion, you think they're going to be more of a man-to-man aggressiveness, or are they going to be more of a zone? What's kind of their theme on defense?
I think it's just mixing it up. I think it's going to depend on the situation, but I do think that what they're going to do is I think they're going to have linebackers that are going to be a little versatile, because I think that, with this defense and you're bringing different pressures, you might have to drop a linebacker in coverage,
right,
in order to bring a defensive back on a blitz or so forth. So you're going to need a lot of versatility back there.
I got you. All right, before we want to hit a little recruiting, and then we'll hit the schedule. Recruiting wise, obviously that's one of the big things that Napier's known for, and then one of the things that obviously led to Dan Mullen's kind of dismissal was his approach to recruiting and the emphasis he put on it. Is Napier? I mean, I know from all indications Napier is gung ho. He and his obviously a staff of 60. He's got a lot of guys doing a lot of things recruiting wise. How active were they in the transfer portal relative to the high school recruiting scene? What is kind of their emphasis on between those two?
Well, the 2023 class so far has been predominantly high school, and I think they've done a pretty good job in terms of getting guys from within the state. I think it's 17 of 20 are from within the state of Florida, and 18 of 20 are 4-stars. So the 4-star percentage is really good. They haven't quite got that 5-star yet.
Right.
Cormani McLean is still out there, right? The kid from Lakeland.
Yep.
Very talented guy, and Miami and Alabama are in the mix for him as well. And he's a guy that's going to be would be a nice kind of cherry on top to this class. But I think they've done pretty well in terms of establishing that. They're establishing kind of the state and the region. And Kelby Collins, the guy they got from Alabama outside of Birmingham, Garden Hill, Alabama, is the highest rated guy. He's 70th nationally as a 4-star. So they're addressing the front line, which I think is important.
No, the good thing for them, again, we talked about this. The good thing, there's going to be plenty of opportunity. He's going to be able to sell opportunity for the next year or so till he gets this thing going, and that's going to be a thing. And again, elite quarterback, and we don't know what There's been projections if Anthony Richardson has a great year, he could potentially go to the NFL. Who knows? And obviously, with the ease of the transfer portal that's available, there are going to be guys that at the end of this year, Napier doesn't. Whether he doesn't want them, they don't want to stay here. There's going to be some attrition in that front, which there'll be every year, of course, now moving forward with the transfer portal. But lots of again, he comes from that Nick Saban recruiting, continuous recruiting, and all that stuff kind of deal. So I think that's a good sign for the Gators compared to what they've had with Dan Mullen in previous administrations.
Yeah, and I think he's really gung-ho about it, and I think he's, like I said before, with the Heavener Center, with NIL and the Gator Collective, he's got a lot to sell, and he's got some momentum. He's got some people behind him. But yeah, he really cares about it, and he cares about getting the best players. But as you know, you got to develop them too, and that's
True.
key. And we've seen plenty of 5 stars not pan out, and we've seen plenty of 2 or 3 stars pan out. I mean,
Right.
You're from the Tampa area. You may know when I was up in Indiana, Micah McFadden was a borderline 2-3 star from Tampa Plant.
Yeah.
And was a 5th round pick of the New York Giants and was an All-American linebacker in Indiana in 2020. So sometimes you find those hidden gems.
And to me, one of the most overlooked things in college football, especially, is the coaching and development part of things. Everybody has all these numbers we put on kids that come into school, whatever school it is, whether they're a 3-star, 2-star, no star, or 5-star, and we all think they're finished products. That is so far from the end truth. That's what makes guys, the guys like, when a team has a great year, is these coaches that can develop kids, especially the kids that maybe were 2 and 3 stars, to make them really good college players.
Yeah, and I think that that's there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for the coaching, for the development, for the infrastructure of your program, which certainly bodes well. And I think one of the things that certainly you look at Alabama and Nick Saban is selling, and certainly something that Miami used to be able to sell, and other programs the ability to develop you to get you to the NFL,
right.
and Florida has that to an extent also. I mean, Kyrie Elam was a 1st round pick of the Buffalo Bills.
Sure.
That's another selling point in recruiting, and a huge, like, what can you do? Billy Donovan in basketball was the same thing. It's like he got players to the NBA continuously, and what can you do to get me to that level? Because that's the lottery ticket, right? Nowadays, even rookie contracts are worth so much money when you're a 1st round pick, and so much goes into that.
All right, let's get to the schedule. We'll get you out of here. A big one to open at Florida Field. Utah comes a call in week 1, Labor Day weekend. The Utes are highly ranked coming into this season, Pac-12 favorites. What is the buzz with Utah coming to town? To me, it's an big opportunity for Napier. Not that he has to win the game, but it's a big opportunity to really show, hey, we can play here. I think the weather will be a factor coming down here for Utah for those guys. You think that? Do you expect a full crowd at Florida in Gainesville week 1?
Yeah, they already announced the sellout, so it's sold out for single tickets. There are a couple of, I think, like season ticket packages left, like a couple hundred. But it's going to be fall, and I think people are very excited about, having this kind of opponent coming to Gainesville. And certainly Utah coming in on a high, 17 starters back from that team that won the Pac-12 and gave Ohio State all it could handle in the Rose Bowl. losing that shootout game 49-45. So
Right.
I think that we'll see right away in the Napier era. I think having that kind of test. He talked about that at SEC Media Day about that sense of urgency in camp.
Right.
Sometimes having that really good opponent really sharpens your focus. And I think that this, like I said, will be interesting. Florida has a string of, I believe it's 31 or 32 straight home openers that they won. But they've never quite had a home opener to this level.
Right.
And that's probably why they haven't. And, sometimes I heard before from Gator fans and maybe even a few coaches that say that they did that because there's no real preseason in college football, right? But this is something that you get a test right away, see what you're made of, and be a huge statement in the Napier area if they can pull this one out.
And they got a tricky second game. You got Kentucky coming to town, SEC opener in week 2, which is not an easy, follow up to Utah, because Utah is known to be a very physical team, all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see that little 2-game stretch will be interesting as far as, Kentucky. Those are some games that, if Florida's going to be good, they need to beat Kentucky. They need to beat some of the mid-level SEC teams this year. You got a 3-game stretch middle of the year at Tennessee, Georgia, and at Texas A&M. So what do you see in the schedule? That's, I'm not saying they're going to go 10-2, but what games in the schedule do you think are must-win games for the Gators, especially in conference?
Yeah, and then don't forget LSU too, and Brian Kelly. I mean,
Right.
I think he's another guy too. And LSU has great athletes. Let's put it that way. They've always got big guys on the line of scrimmage. So I think that will be an interesting storyline, certainly to watch in terms of what that game. It would be tremendous momentum wise if the Gators could get off to a good start. But with that, I think that one of the biggest questions I think on this team is depth. I've heard people say that Napier really likes his first 22, but beyond that, he's a little concerned.
Yeah.
So I could see the possibility of Florida getting off to a good start and then stumbling a little bit in October because some injuries will mount and you'll be dealing with more unproven guys. And certainly Georgia is going to be a tall order. LSU, I think, even though it's here, will be a tall order. Even though they're adjusting to a new coach, but Brian Kelly's a very talented guy and has proven his ability to win. So that's how I see the season kind of going. I see it as maybe tough in the beginning, a little bit of a lull in the middle, and then finishing on a high note.
You see 6. You obviously you think bowl eligibility. Obviously 6 and 6, 7 and 5 kind of year.
Yeah, I actually predicted 8 and 5. I mean, I'm being a little pie in the sky, a little optimistic, but. I think it's possible they could get to 8 wins. FSU is kind of struggling,
right?
Even though the game is there. Vandy late in the season. If they stick together and don't quit on the season, I did have a worst case of 5 and 7, and my best case was 9 and 4. But if they can kind of stick together, and I could see them finishing the year with the way the schedule lays out on a little bit of a high note with a little bit of momentum.
All right. Well, great work, Kevin Brockway, Gainesville Sun. Tell everybody where they can find your work online.
Yeah, Gatorsports.com. And my Twitter is at Kevin Brockway G1.
We will have Kevin on sporadically throughout the year for sure to keep you abreast of all the Gator news and notes coming out of Gainesville. Is Napier a nice guy? You like working with Napier? Has he been pretty nice to work with so far?
Yeah, he's been pretty good so far. I mean, we've only had him for a couple of sessions. Like I said, I jumped into the beat a little bit after SEC Media Days, so I got here right before Media Day.
Okay.
But so far, all my interactions with him has been, certainly very positive. Wish he would give us a little more practice access, but we're taking advantage of what we have and trying to glean from the team. But we'll certainly learn a lot more during the course of the season.
That's what I was going to ask you. Does he come from the Saban mold where he's as tight-lipped and as tight as they can come when it comes to that stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's pretty tough. But, don't forget Dabo Swinney was one of his influences too. So he's got, I think he's got a few guys that he's, drawn from. But Nick Saban is certainly a guy that, Florida's hired a few Saban disciples. They've hired Will Muschamp. They've hired Jim McElwain.
Right.
Neither of those really worked out long term. So we'll see how this goes.
Kind of like the Belichick and his disciples, and not always the assistants haven't always panned out as well as one Bill Belichick has. So interesting.
Yeah,
well, exactly. Kevin, appreciate the time, man. Great work. and we'll definitely be in touch as we move through the college football season.
Yep. Thank you very much.
You got it. All right. We'll be right back with our next preview.